All right, let's take you now back to Centurion at the Swartkop Air Force Base, where just a few moments ago, the remains of the 14 SANDF soldiers arrived at the Air Force Base. My colleague, Khayelihle Khumalo, is standing by for us. Khaya, of course, you were speaking just to some of the authorities in terms of what we are likely to see then happen as at 6 p.m. this evening, when that repatriation ceremony as well as the memorial service happens for the 14 fallen soldiers. Just talk to us about the very latest where you are.
Well, absolutely not. I can tell you this much. We do understand that the family members are approaching now the Air Force Base, and obviously it's going to be that all-important moment where they will be coming to terms with the sad reality. You know that they've been very instrumental in expressing, pleading with the authorities in terms of making sure that their loved ones are brought back to the country. But it's quite a very interesting affair here, because the military, you know, the discipline is quite really steeped in their DNA, so they're making everything possible to make sure that everything is well executed. But of course, we still do have Sophie Mokoena really just to delve into other key issues surrounding this story. Maybe Sophie, first of all, I mean, the issue around whether is there withdrawal, is there reinforcement, a lot of reports have been swirling around. What are we getting on the ground?
Well, I think there's misinformation in terms of what's happening on the ground. I think in a situation like this, you would perhaps have some capacity on standby in terms of preparing that should you take a decision to withdraw or to pull out because there's ceasefire and the peace processes, the political processes are underway. You will then have to evacuate the staff that's there, including the troops. Now, I think that's what is happening. You must have a team, a capacity on standby, monitoring the political process, because we know the summit has given directive that the ministers and the generals must prepare in terms of pushing for ceasefire. And as you heard the president, I think the president gave us a clue that those negotiations are underway, even though it's not a formal negotiations engaging all stakeholders, including the M23. So that might lead to cessation of hostilities, and then you will have to then pull out to give peace a chance. So I think that's where the confusion is. There is no reinforcement on the ground. You can't reinforce on the ground because M23 has captured the eastern part of the DRC, that is Goma. And as I pointed out, our troops now are confined in the bases, and they can't engage in fighting unless they will be defending themselves should there be attacks directed at them. And I got some messages from the troops, because they do speak to people and families, that they are there. M23 is not doing anything, but the only problem is they need water, they need food supply, and it's quite tense for them because they are now confined in the bases. And when they just walk to the gate, there are those M23 guys with guns. So it's quite tense for them psychologically and all of that. So I don't think the story of reinforcement is what is happening. I think the AU summit this weekend will also give a clearer perspective in terms of these peacekeeping forces that are there with different mandates, what's going to happen to them, because now Goma is captured by M23. You can't risk now fighting after they've captured that area, because many people are going to die and innocent people are going to die. So the issue of reinforcement, I think it's just capacity building, and that can happen in a neighboring country. You know, when there were tension in Mozambique, we saw the Americans having their plane in South Africa near Mpumalanga for evacuation processes. And people thought that these are American soldiers, they are going to fight either supporting Mozambique. It's the process of, should there be evacuation, you must have capacity and you must have personnel to do that. Because the soldiers, remember, the state they are in psychologically and physically, they need support. They can't evacuate themselves. If you decide that now we have agreed on a peace process, there's cessation of hostility, and we want to withdraw.
Sophie, a very important issue because, there's quite a lot of reports. Let's look at the fate of those troops. I mean, obviously, proliferation of these militias and many other groups really engaged in these particular conflicts. But let's look at the conditions. I mean, obviously, the United Nations is a key facilitator here.
Yes, the UN as a neutral institution, an organization that's charged with the responsibility of maintenance of peace, is assisting. That is why when the bodies were repatriated, it was a UN-led process, mission, from Goma to a border in the DRC, in Rwanda, and then to Uganda as the bodies were kept at the UN facility. And therefore, the UN will continue to assist. But you would recall the M23 rebels made an undertaking that they will not attack the South African troops who are there right now, because they are not fighting with the South African the contingent. Apparently, what sparked that standoff was when, and this is allegations that still has to be investigated by the UN and the human rights organizations around the world, the government forces fired in the direction of Rwanda. And the South African base was in between these Congolese and also these M23 on the side. So as the minister spoke about bullets were flying over our heads, this was an attack that landed in Rwanda. And then the M23 and perhaps the Rwandan forces retaliated. But as they retaliate, they then didn't realize that the attack is behind, it's not this base. So there was that standoff that ensued. So that is why this area is very, very delicate at this moment, because you don't have a authority. You have M23 now having taken over. But as I pointed out, they have indicated that they will not attack our troops and they will assist where they can in terms of supplies for our troops. And as I pointed out, perhaps what the government has done is to have capacity in one of the neighboring countries should there be a need. If there's peace, if there's an agreement for cessation of hostility, and also if there's a decision taken of withdrawal. My suspicion is we will see a withdrawal.